A newspaper is much more than a carrier of news. For most readers, it is a reliable friend, a good habit acquired in adolescence. It is their window to the world, a veritable gold mine of information of all kind. Even the advertisements serve a need, be it searching for a house, a job, or a suitable match in marriage. This is the reason, the personal bonding that makes newspapers so influential. Not all subscribers may read the editorials or analytical article on that page, but hardly anyone remains immune to the opinions expressed by the newspapers read by them. Public opinion is to a large extent shaped by the newspapers. Millennia before the invention of printing, written records was the preferred medium for all important communications. Lines cast in stone or inscribed on metal plates enjoyed a much greater credibility than the ephemeral speech. The modern printing press was brought to India in the 17th century by the Europeans, primarily to print religious texts, but soon was put to serve secular causes. The first newspaper in India was published by an Englishman for the Englishmen resident in this country. The first Indian newspaper was published by legendary social reformer and visionary Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who first published weekly newspapers in Bengali, English, and Persian. Similar ventures in other Indian languages followed. In the wake of the Great Rebellion in 1857, newspapers in Hindi, Marathi, and Bengali proliferated. Bhartetu Harishchandra in Banaras started Tattva Prabodhini Patrika. Bal Gangadhar Tilak began Kesari. Aurobindo edited Vande Mataram in Bengali. Articulating the Indian people's aspirations for self-rule and independence, the nationalist press played a very significant role in raising the level of political consciousness of the masses. Newspaper coverage of the partition of Bengal provoked outbursts of public anger. In the Hindi heartland, Saraswati, edited by Mahavir Prasad Dwivedi, and Pratap, with Ganesh Shankar Vidyarthi at the helm, exercised great influence. Most of the important leaders in the freedom struggle worked as journalists. The advent of Gandhi was like a gust of fresh air that galvanized millions. Gandhi used print media skillfully to convey his message. He was associated with Young India, Harijan, and the Navjivan. Nehru edited National Herald, and C.Y. Chintamani steered the leader. Martyrdom of brave patriots like Bhagat Singh and his comrades was covered in nationalistic press. Nationalistic newspapers were published in all languages including Urdu. Day-to-day progress of Mahatma Gandhi's historic marches was also reported. The democratic aspirations of the Indian people provided most of the content in print media in this period. There were many other proprietors and editors who didn't fight shy of challenging colonial masters. Their newspapers were like beacons of guiding light in a dark, turbulent sea.
fighting for independence. That was the objective. So media was instrument to mobilize people and to propagate idea of freedom, and therefore that particular media had a clearly defined role, and it was almost a sort of unanimously defined role.
उस समय जो पत्रकारिता थी वो एक तरह से व्रत था और उसके मुकाबले अंग्रेजी की पत्रकारिता एक प्रकार से वृत्ति थी.
Independence brought far-reaching changes in the realm of print media. British-owned newspapers like The Statesman and The Times of India changed ownership, and many new newspapers were started. The momentous events in the immediate aftermath of independence and the partition dominated the news coverage. The challenge of nation building was stupendous. It was the print media that was the main source of news, views, and entertainment for the masses. Even the unlettered could look at the pictures or enjoy the cartoons. Bouquets and brickbats were evenly handed out to politicians and others in public life. Pandit Nehru respected the freedom of the press and took constructive criticism in his stride. Things changed after his death, slowly but significantly.
We have Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution of India, which talks of freedom of expression as a fundamental right. This right would be meaningless if different media did not have the freedom to express views in an independent, in an autonomous manner, even if these views are not in line with or appreciated by those in positions of power and authority.
Enough space was made available in the letters to editor columns to make the voice of the people heard. The 5-year plans, war and peace, hopes and despair in the arena of sports were all reported dutifully and analyzed in print. All major events in the nation's life were communicated to the readers by newspapers. The transfer of power after Lal Bahadur Shastri's death to Indira Gandhi and momentous policy changes formed the headlines. News was often analyzed critically.
I would not say that it was necessarily a pillar at the beginning of democracy. It was in Panditji's days. It was a much more, I would say, docile media. It was very supportive of the government. For that was the need of the hour. But then as things evolved and as democracy matured, as participation in democracy increased, and especially after the emergency, the jhatka of the emergency, the jolt that we all got and democracy lovers got, I think media acquired a completely different role. After emergency, its relationship with the executive became more adversarial.
The emergency imposed by Indira Gandhi in 1975 exposed the vulnerability of the press. Censorship was strictly implemented to dispel slightest dissent. The judiciary failed to protect the fourth pillar of democracy in its hour of need, but a few individual owners and editors kept alive the flame of freedom. Ramnath Goenka and Arun Shourie at the Indian Express, Kuldeep Nair at the Statesman, Nikhil Chakravarti of the Mainstream, and Ramesh Thapar of Seminar refused to be cowed down. When normalcy was restored, those working in the print media emerged stronger after the ordeal by fire and became far more zealous about guarding their rights. Print media in India is not monolithic, but reflects the glorious diversity of this great land. English language newspapers are akin to the visible tip of the iceberg. Indian language newspapers have a much larger readership and impact. Hindi newspapers like Nai Duniya, published from Indore, have long enjoyed a much larger readership and more enviable reputation than the newspapers printed in the capital and other large cities.
हम जिस तरह से चीज़ों को देखने के आदी हैं, उसमें हम लोग यही सोचते हैं कि एक तो दिल्ली से जो अखबार निकलते हैं वो बड़े हैं, दूसरे जो अंग्रेज़ी में निकलते हैं वो बड़े हैं, जबकि हकीकत ये नहीं है। हकीकत ये है कि जो अखबार छोटे पैमाने पे हैं, छोटे पैमाने का मतलब ये नहीं कि बिल्कुल कोई जिसको हम लघु पत्रकारिता कहते हैं उस तरह का नहीं, वो बड़े पैमाने के अखबार हैं, लेकिन उन जगहों से निकलते हैं जो अपेक्षा छोटी जगह हैं। मेरे ख्याल में उनका असर भी ज़्यादा है और जो पाठक है उससे भी उनका जुड़ाव ज़्यादा है।
The historic city of Banaras, now called Varanasi, was where the leading Hindi daily Aaj was first published in 1920. When editors like Rajendra Mathur and Prabhas Joshi, who had served in Nai Duniya for decades, moved to Delhi, they ushered in dramatic changes in the newspapers they took charge of. Eminent men of letters and poets like Agge and Dharamveer Bharti and Raghuvir Sahai edited Hindi magazines and newspapers with great distinction. The tradition of Dinman was maintained by Ravivar when S.P. Singh edited it.
हिंदी पत्रकारिता में मुझे ये लगता है कि वो जनता के ज़्यादा नज़दीक है। लोक भावनाएं वो ज़्यादा प्रामाणिक ढंग से प्रतिबिंबित कर पाती है। हिंदी की पत्रिकाओं ने एक ज़माने में बड़ी खास भूमिका निभाई, खास तौर से धर्मयुग ने और धर्मवीर भारती जी ने, जिन्होंने खुल के सरकार के खिलाफ मोर्चा लिया और छापा। लेकिन इन पत्रिकाओं का बड़ा योगदान था। हिंदी जगत को, उसके भद्रलोक को खूब उन्होंने जगाया, हिलाया और प्रवृत्त किया प्रतिरोध के लिए।
The Hindi newspaper Bhaskar started in Bhopal as a modest operation, but today has a nationwide footprint with more than 50 editions.
So very strangely, though only 15 to 20% people speak, read or write English, and 80% people speak in their local languages or mother tongues, the influence on national politics is determined by the English media and at local politics by the language media, and this disconnect, according to me, is harmful for democracy, harmful for federal democracy.
The greatest strength of our democracy is the celebration of diversity. While majority rules in a democracy, the true test of a vibrant democracy is the space it provides for voices of dissent and different points of view. The print media in different regional languages bears testimony to how it provides a platform to myriad voices.
Indian language media is really the pillar of democracy that we are talking about, because they impact many more people. Malayalam, Bengali, you've had long, old, established papers. They are very good, comprehensive newspapers. Some have agendas, some they have political biases, but again, this has been the tradition in that media, and on the whole, I think they are prospering. The real growth is happening in the language media.
This is true of not only Hindi journalism, but can be said about the print media of other regional languages.
Best example of this would be Kerala, where there is no indigenous English newspaper. They're all imports, Express, Hindu. It is the Malayalam press that really matters.
Kerala prides itself on newspapers in Malayalam that were started in the last quarter of the 19th century or in the first phase of the 20th. The state has highest literacy rate in the country, and the readership in Malayalam of newspapers like Malayal Manorama or Mathrubhumi leaves the English dailies far behind. Tamil newspapers and magazines have a distinct style of their own that mirrors the rise of the Dravidian social reform movement, and its iconic figures have always focused on the interest of the poor and the discriminated.
A person like Sipa Aditanar, who founded Dinatandi in 1942, is being credited with introducing many things which have become the dominant characteristics of Tamil journalism now. One important characteristic is taking the newspaper to the common man, to the rickshaw puller.
Chennai in Tamil Nadu can boast of a legendary institution, the Hindu. As an English language newspaper, it has consistently championed the cause of nationalism. In the same state, Tamil language newspapers were started by social reformers, most of them associated with the Dravida awakening. Thanti, Dinamalar, and Dinakaran are all committed to this cause.
In vernacular daily papers, they have a reporters in even small towns. They cover from a rural, urban, even they give the importance to the national news in that vernacular daily papers.
It was in Bengal that the Renaissance had started, and it is not surprising that the Bengalis are avid readers of newspapers printed in their mother tongue. Anand Bazar Patrika ruled the roofs for decades before Bartoman emerged to claim its own space. In the state of Assam, the local newspapers like Assam Tribune and Amar Assam may not have large circulation individually. Their hold on the imagination of their readers is great. In Odisha, newspapers like Samaj, Samvad, and Dharitri are quite popular. The formation of Andhra Pradesh ushered in the era of states formed on linguistic basis. Newspapers in Telugu like Inadu, started by Ramoji Rao, and Varta have effectively articulated the cultural and political aspirations of their readers. In Punjab, the first newspapers published were in Urdu, but with passage of time, Hindi newspapers like Punjab Kesari made steady inroads. English newspapers like the Tribune have held their own against stiff competition by the national English dailies.
There are small publications that are run by groups of women belonging to minority sections in some of the most economically backward parts of this country. And these reach out and disseminate information to a certain section of the people, which the so-called mainstream media doesn't.
A small Urdu newspaper printed in Chennai has been transformed by a committed group of youngsters. Not only has the newspaper moved from calligraphy and lithography to offset printing, it has included women in its editorial staff. This has empowered the women in the community, given them a voice, and increased the readership. There are many other small newspapers across the country that are inspired by the success of this venture. In Rajasthan, the Hindi daily Rajasthan Patrika has always been held in high respect by readers in the state due to its objective reporting and extensive coverage of local issues. Gujarat can claim that it has been home to a newspaper edited and published by Gandhiji, Gujarat Samachar, Sandesh, and Divya Bhaskar all enjoy large circulation and influence. Maharashtra, like Bengal, was the region that has played a significant role in heightening the national awakening against the British. There have been many worthy successors to uphold the glorious tradition of Kesari newspaper.
After formation of Maharashtra, it became more professional, as it were, and got more issue-based. But I would say that by and large, the quality of Marathi media was retained quite for some time. in its views, in its news coverage, in its intellectual approach, in the national and international issues.
All major newspaper publishers in English also publish newspapers in Marathi. Maharashtra Times, Sakal and Lok Satta illustrate this. Progress in technology has had a dramatic impact on print medium. Splashes of brilliant color enliven pages that once presented a drab black and white visage. News stories are constantly shrinking and pictures expanding.
Apart from the news that it should be giving and the editorial views that it expresses, it's a means of dialogue between the newly empowered Indians talking to each other through the media. And I think that is a very important role, which in some ways is being extinguished by greater centralization of these media.
Sensational headlines compete with constantly breaking news. The changes have caused serious concern among those who feel that the cancer of consumerism has eroded the missionary spirit in the fourth estate.
The kind of intellectual vigor that you once found, that has reduced considerably, primarily because that vigor was focused on things like politics, on ideological questions, on cultural matters, and partly on economy. But what has happened is that now there are hardly any discussions, for example, on economy. There's more discussion on business. And therefore, I think there's a new trinity which has emerged in our media, and which really, if I can sum it up, even in a caricatural form, it is interest in sex and spirituality.
The rising tide of consumerism has swept away everything in its path. Newspapers and magazines are full of reportage of the lifestyle of the rich and the beautiful. Page 3 journalism has become a metaphor for a serious illness.
From mission, we've gone to commerce. And that, I think, is a very dangerous thing. Paid news, private treaties, and so on and so forth, which are not merely undemocratic, but which are undermining our democratic structure.
This has pushed out of sight all news that focuses on the concerns of the common people. The livelihood issues and challenges of development are invisible. The space for debate and analysis is shrinking. The definition of news seems to be changing dangerously. Housing, water and sanitation, health and education are routinely neglected.
Journalism today is commerce, more commerce and less of mission. And because it's more commerce and less of mission, there are aberrations which need to be addressed. There are holdings in newspapers of big business people, and we know that unfortunately that their intervention goes far beyond the business aspect of journalism.
The corporatization of the media, which was inevitable because of the economic reforms underway for the past 15 odd years. So that doesn't surprise me. It's not so much that they will interfere in what line you take and whom you support and whom you don't support. It's basically to say that, look, you cut down on costs, and obviously the first cost to be cut down are news gathering costs.
The political class gives so much importance to the media, particularly the print media. We not only have a nexus between politics and business, but clearly we seem to have a nexus between politics and media as well.
What is heartening is that despite the charges of cancer of corruption spreading to the realm of media, the press in India has marched on undeterred by threats and temptations to expose corruption in high places. Unrestrained sensational coverage of sensitive issues like communal riots and caste strife by media have at times inflamed passion and made it difficult to restore normalcy.
In two areas, I would say media should be a little careful. Security of the state. Second is the communal. In situation of communal writing, you have to report with a bit of understatement. Don't let your reporting or comment inflame another right. This country has suffered because of communal conflict. Our job is also to ensure that communal harmony doesn't get disturbed because of our writing.
This has constrained the parliament and the judiciary to advise media to exercise self-censorship. The Press Council of India has been particularly harsh in its recent admonitions. This has engendered a heated debate about the freedom of press.
I would say that in our pluralistic democracy, generally the media is playing a very positive role. They have to have a self-denying ordinance and not go too far. There is no way we can censor them or should censor them.
The independence and vigor of print media provide irrefutable evidence to the strength of our democracy. The print media is far more rooted in the native soil to serve effectively as the voice of the people.